Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. So excited to have our next guest back with us today, Miss Natalie H. Rogers joining us here. Excited to have her. How are you?
Oh, I'm great, and I'm so excited about this interview.
Me too, because we're also live on Zoom for those of you that are viewing or listening. Either way, I get to see her today, which is exciting. And she's a psychotherapist, author, actress, so much more. Let me have you introduce yourself, and I know we're going to have a great conversation today.
Okay, so I am Natalie H. Rogers. In a previous career, I was the artistic director of the theater company, the Dove Theater Company in New York City. And now I am a psychotherapist, MSW, and I am the founder of Talk Power, a panic clinic for public speaking. And I am the author, this is my third book, and I'm going to show it to you, Talk Power, the mind-body way to speak without fear. I am an expert in the area of public speaking, fear, and stage fright. Okay, so this is my book, Sky Horse.
So excited to talk about Talk Power today.
Hey, let's do that.
Absolutely. So let's start off with the basics. I mean, what is this book all about? Tell us.
Well, this is my third book, and this book is about a system of training that people who have a fear of speaking in public can do step by step to overcome their fear. And that's because this is a system with exercises, routines, and drills that affect the brain and that remodels the brain. The brain has plasticity, can always change. That's how you learn new skills. And in this book, you will learn how to learn the skill of performance. Okay?
Awesome, which a lot of people need to perform, and in general, not just for work purposes, but life is a performance, right? Every day you walk into the store, you walk in, you just say hello to someone at the store, at the gas station. It's like you're on a stage. So could you talk a little about your background specifically, Natalie H. Rogers, please?
Well, I was an actress, and I was trained by the Stanislavski method. And what happened is that I decided we were very, very poor at that time. I mean, we just had this little off-Broadway theater company. So I decided to go back to school to become a psychotherapist. And I took a course in public speaking because I thought that would be really easy for me since I was an older student, etc. Well, I was really shocked to see how nervous and uncomfortable everybody was. I never had that problem. I was like little Miss Filibuster. And also, I noticed that there was no training going on. It was taught as an intellectual, subject with lectures and suggestions and hints and tips. And it wasn't having any effect on the people who were really nervous. And I idea about how you could break down this into a training model. And so that's how I got my start with public speaking fear.
Amazing. And now, how long have you been conducting your workshops for?
Well, I have to tell you that I've been conducting my workshops. My first book was published 30 years ago.
Unbelievable.
I have thousands. I have worked with 13,000 participants in my workshops. And I have thousands of letters and emails thanking me for helping them to change their lives. This is the first new model for training in 100 years since Dale Carnegie.
Amazing. And we're talking, this book was just published now, just recently, right?
Published in August of 21.
Okay.
And my first was published by a company that doesn't even exist anymore. It was called How to Speak Without Fear, although Amazon is still selling it. And it was published in 1984. That's probably before you were born.
No, I was born in 78. I'm 44. I'm getting up there myself. It's okay. Age is just a number. I cannot believe that you don't look old enough to be doing workshops for 30 years. That is amazing.
No.
Now, do you want to talk specifically about your approach in a sense and how that compares to maybe the standard method?
Well, let's talk about the standard method and why it is so totally ineffective. The standard method gives suggestions and tips and hints and lectures, and they just send you up, go up there and, talk about your favorite hobby. And the problem with people who have very high anxiety or who avoid speaking in public is so intense and so deep that it's just like telling a person who's having a heart attack, well, relax and you'll. Now, my approach, and I started working on this when I was an acting teacher in my theater company. And it has to do with exercises that I designed, drills and routines that are, that you really do physically, that actually affect your brain. And now scientists are finding that exercise does affect your brain and can actually, stop Alzheimer's from becoming a serious problem. But anyway, in my program has nothing to do with Alzheimer's, but I was just, saying that these exercises affect your brain. And what it does is it gives you a boundary from the audience. In other words, a person who's nervous spends 75% of their time thinking about the audience while they're doing their presentation. And what they're thinking is, oh, this isn't going well, they don't like me, this is boring, I'm too fat, I'm too thin, I'm too young. They're very negative kind of self-criticism. And all the time they're talking, they're doing their presentation. These exercises train the brain so that you can send your attention not to the audience, but to what you have to say, to your material. It makes a boundary. It enhances your concentration. And it's those negative thoughts that gives you all the anxiety, so you don't have those negative thoughts. And it allows you to speak more slowly, your rapid heartbeat slows down, and you're able to think clearly. And this is the secret sentence. Think clearly while people are looking at you. That's the secret. People looking at people who have a fear of speaking in public totally destroys them. And this fear, it devastates people's lives. They can't have kids, they drop out of law school, they give up promotions where they'll have to talk. They can't even make a toast at a wedding or deliver a eulogy.
Now, could I ask you, some of this starts, from genetics, from birth, in a sense, right? The fear, and then the stuttering, which, we can get into as well. Does it, or could a traumatic impact of something happen in your life, a real fear, real embarrassment cause this to happen?
Well, I'm going to tell you, your listeners, so your audience, something very, very important. You were not born with this problem, because all healthy babies have no problem expressing themselves. They cry loud and clear. Isn't that right?
Very true.
It's an impulse. It comes from an impulse. Something's bothering them. They cry. So if you were born with this freedom of expression, you have to ask yourself, where did it happen that I started getting crushed down?
Yeah.
Where did it happen that all of a sudden I started taking invisible positions, at the back of the room, keeping my mouth shut, not expressing myself? When did it happen? Did it happen when I started school and I had a nasty teacher, or I was being bullied? Or was it an older brother or sister? Or did I have an alcoholic mother or father? Or did I have a controlling dad? When did it happen? And if you learned to be afraid of speaking in public with Natalie H. Rogers' Talk Power, a panic clinic for public speaking, you can unlearn that and learn to be a really wonderful speaker.
Wow. Can you talk to us more about this program? And then, of course, you also work with children?
I have given workshops for children, of course, modifying my program as young as 10 years of age. And the parents don't come. It was once a week for 5 weeks, for an hour, for 2 hours, excuse me. And the parents didn't come, and they came to the last class, and they were bowled over by how focused and in control those children were. The children were better than the parents. And they would say, today I am going to talk about my dog, Woofy. It was very adorable. Yes, I modify. And what I want to say is this program has 2 parts to it, okay? Usually before the pandemic, I would give a weekend workshop, 14 hours, 2 days. And there were 2 parts. The first part had to do with a series of exercises that reduced the rapid heartbeat, reduced the anxiety, and made people feel they were in control. It's a whole different way of focusing your attention. And the second part has to do with the model that I've created for how to put together a presentation for, now listen to this, for a listening audience, because you never learn in school. In school, you learn to do a presentation for a reading audience, right? Yeah. So if people get over or you're repetitive or disorganized, they kind of put it together. But when people are listening, if you go off the main topic, oh boy, right, you know it. So that's what the Talk Power program is all about.
Wow. And is this true? You're working with people in China now too?
Yeah, yes. So that's a very interesting story. Several years ago, my book has been translated into 14 languages: Arabic, Chinese, French, German, Swedish. And my book was translated into Chinese. And this man who owned a whole bunch of franchise public speaking classes in China read my book. And he knew that I was the answer he was looking for, because Chinese people are ruled by a mandate that says silence is gold. Silence is mouth shut. Now, business people who are negotiating and dealing with Western companies are silent. In other words, it's very hard for them to communicate. So when he saw my program, which was so different than what he was teaching in his franchises, he started communicating with me, and he got me to come to China with an assistant. And the first time I came, they loved it so much. They asked me back 8 times in 2 years. And then politically it became very difficult, so I stopped going. But 8 times in 2 years to China, working with a translator with Chinese business people.
Amazing. Wow. The work to come out of that, right? I love that story. We talked about it in the past on another show. And I love your delivery when you were talking about thinking they wouldn't need your services. Next thing you know, you're welcome back, and you keep coming back. That's amazing.
Right. It was fascinating.
And what about, currently you're just working in the US now, or are you still worldwide?
Well, I really don't travel now because of the pandemic, and I don't do the workshops. What I do is I do one-on-one on Skype or FaceTime. And as a matter of fact, I have a workshop coming up for social workers who are wanting to renew their licenses. And I have a workshop coming up this Wednesday, and it's going to be on Zoom. And that's going to be fascinating, because usually I do workshops, with groups of people that I can see. And here it's going to be 40 or 50 people who are each in their apartments looking at their computers and going through the exercises, the hands that I demonstrate. So we'll see how that works out. Although I have had practice with one-on-one. I do one-on-one workshops. And if any of your listeners are interested in doing a one-on-one workshop, you can just call me at 212-684-1711, 212-684-1711, and we can set up a series of sessions on Skype. If you've got a promotion and you're worried about your public speaking, well, come to see the Panic Clinic for Public Speaking on Skype.
Now, do you also teach students how to compose a talk, in a sense?
Absolutely. As I said, the second part has to do with the model.
Got it. Okay, sorry.
And then the other thing, you mentioned the stuttering. Years ago, I had a man who stuttered, and he was in one of my workshops. And it's very uncomfortable for people who are in a class where there are stutterers. Well, let me tell you something. He went through the exercises, and then he had to do his final presentation. And there was a big gasp in the class, because he spoke perfectly fluently. And then I discovered that these amazing exercises that I designed worked for people who stutter. Now, since I'm not a speech pathologist, there's a lot of questions about, my authenticity and my credibility and so on. But I'll tell you something, even in the first session, there is a little bit of fluent talk. So if people stuttering are interested, look at my website, talkpowerinc.com, and you will find out more about my stuttering program.
Amazing, amazing. And are you also still giving acting lessons as well?
What I learned is that acting and speaking in public are two different things, because acting has to do with taking on a role and being somebody else. But performance has to do with being able to deliver that role in front of people who are looking at you. So they're really two different things. I don't give acting lessons. I give performance training.
Perfect. Good to know. I love the terminology and the verbiage. So, and we were talking a little bit about before about the stuttering, about the fear of speaking. Is that something that would come back after your courses? Is it possible to come back again in someone's life, or are you once do you get cured in a sense?
Well, I don't like to think of it as being cured. I like to think of it as learning a skill. See, now I'll ask you something. If you learn how to ride a bicycle and you didn't know how to ride before, would that come back that you don't know how to ride?
No. Hey,
no.
I haven't driven stick in 20 years. I just went overseas to Greece. I just got back and I remembered how to drive a stick because it's been 20 years. I can't do it. And then I'm like, oh, yes, I can.
And I'll tell you why. Because when you learn a new skill, when you do my exercises, you grow chains of cells. That's why it's a neuroscientific program. You grow chains of cells for that particular skill. And that's organic matter that you have in your brain that's there. So even if you took my workshop and 20 years later, you wanted to make a toast, you would be, if you walked through the exercises, it would all come back because those original cells are still there. It's really fascinating, the brain work that's being done. But I knew all this 30 years ago because the entire class would succeed. And there were people who never in their lives ever spoke in public. But every single person in that class got up and did a 10-minute presentation that was fascinating. Every single person. So then I knew I really have something.
Amazing, amazing work. Also, would you say that some people are really just incapable of facing an audience, or can everyone really learn?
Everyone can learn a skill unless you have something wrong with you. And people can, as I said before, these exercises train your brain so that your attention, instead of going out to and connecting with the audience connects with you and your attention goes to your material. Is that, did I make
sense? That makes sense. Uh-huh.
So that, whereas before, you had no place to go but out to the audience. Once you do the training, the audience and you have boundaries. And your attention, it's all about where is your attention that determines your level of concentration. If your attention is on what you have to say, your concentration is holding.
Yeah.
But the minute you start thinking about what you're saying, it's not good, and the audience, that breaks up your concentration and makes you very, very anxious. And all the people who are listening who have a fear of speaking in public, they know just what I'm talking about. Because I've heard thousands of horror stories about all the things that have happened.
Could you share a success story or two from, your client list of?
I get letters. I get the most beautiful letters. Even, I spent 10 years at the American Express as their communications consultant, and I gave workshops called, I was just an outside consultant, called Stress Seminar for Public Speaking. And I got the most beautiful letter from my boss, and she said, my course, Stress Seminar for Public Speaking, was the most popular course that they had there, and that it really changed people in a very in deep way. And I treasure that letter.
And now let's talk more about these workshops that you are conducting. It's important to remind everyone, when is the next one that's coming up?
Well, this is the next one, the one for the social workers. And after that, I'm sure I'm going to be doing a whole series of workshops for social workers. But I'm not putting together workshops yet. I'm doing one-on-one, which is very, very successful. In other words, when actors rehearse, they don't have an audience, and yet they are able to rehearse and learn their parts and their blocking and everything. The same thing is true about this program. If you do the exercises, you will benefit in the same way as if you were talking to an audience.
Got it.
So you have an audience.
No, absolutely. And when, one-on-one, would you say is more effective compared to group, the workshops? What do you suggest? And is it up to the individual?
No, it's a very structured program. It goes step by step by step. It's almost like a ballet class. You know what I mean? So you do the first step that leads to the second step that leads to, and also I'm going to say one more thing about breath. People who breathe using their chest to do the pumping excite the fight or flight response. That's a terrible way to, and the information that is given, take a deep breath, is totally wrong. Because what happens is that people get all excited and they're ready to do a cardiovascular exercise. If they ran out of the room, they would feel great. But sitting in your seat, waiting to go on and do your presentation and breathing with your chest causes your heart to beat rapidly, causes your entire body to go into an accelerated mode. And some people have panic attacks when they're doing that. I teach people how to breathe using your diaphragm or belly breathing when you're trying to calm yourself down. And that's the way to breathe before you do the presentation.
Belly breathing. Remind us, how should we be breathing? Could you give us the example?
I'll give you an example. If you want to learn how to do it, you put one hand on your chest and one hand on your stomach and just pull your belly in gently, but don't move your chest, and release it. This is the training part. It shows what moves and what doesn't move. Pull your belly in and then release your belly. Okay? So that's the part that moves. Your chest is still.
Okay.
Put your hand in front of your nose and just blow out on your hand. Now, put the two things together. You pull your belly, and you don't use your hand in the real world. This is just the training.
Okay.
You blow out through your nose and pull your belly in at the same time. And hold it. Now release your stomach muscle and take a little bit, very shallow air. Let's do it again, Joe.
Okay.
Pull your belly in, blow out through the nose. Hold it. Now release your stomach muscle and take a little bit of air. Don't move your chest. Pull your belly in, blow out through the nose. Hold it. And release your stomach muscle, take a little bit of air. Okay.
Wow.
Now
okay. Yeah, I'm getting it now. I got it.
That is diaphragmatic breathing. And the diaphragm is a muscle that's under your lungs. So it goes up and down. When you pull your belly in and blow out through the nose, the diaphragm comes up and pushes the air out of your lungs. When you relax your stomach muscle, the diaphragm goes down and then your lungs have the room to fill up with air. Follow? So that's what we're doing. That's a big, mystery about it. Everybody talks about diaphragmatic breathing, but that is what diaphragmatic breathing is. And that's what the diaphragm is.
Wow.
This bellow that goes up and down, pushes the air out of the lungs, goes down, the lungs fill up with air. That's what should be doing the pushing, not the rib cage or the chest, because that excites the fight or flight response.
Got it. Natalie H. Rogers, we have 2 minutes left in the show. Still want to talk more about Talk Power, of course, your book, and the workshops. How did you want to leave off with us today?
Well, I want to talk about my book. My book has everything you ever wanted to know about public speaking, but everything. And you can get it on Amazon or in Barnes & Noble carries this book, and it's called Talk Power, The Mind-Body Way to Speak Without Fear, and Skyhorse Publishing is the publisher. Perfect. Now, and it's the green book, because I have many books out there on Amazon, older books, but the green book is the one that you want. It's the latest one. Also, my contact information, my telephone number, get your pen and pencil ready. Yep. Telephone number 212-684-1711. 212-684-1711, and I'm happy to provide you with a free consultation.
Beautiful.
My website is talkpowerinc.com, TALKPOWER, one word, inc.com. And my email is natalierogers11@AOL.com, NATALIEROGERS11@AOL.com.
Thank you so much, Natalie H. Rogers. Pleasure to see you, speak with you again. And again, much success to you with the workshops, with your book. And thank you for being here again. Have a great day. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.